And here we are on Ways and Means. It is Thursday, March 19th. 2:20. We are looking at an amendment to the transportation bill. And Damian Leonard is sitting right there to tell us about it.
Okay. For the record, I'm Damian Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. So there are a handful of instances of amendment here. The first instance of amendment would strike out sections 14 and 15, which are the changes to the pilot special fund to send the excess revenues or a portion of the excess revenues to the state aid for town highways. And those will be replaced with just the indication that those sections were deleted. Okay. Second instance,
So where was it going before? You need to.
So
Hey, I need to.
right now, the pilot special fund, that money is going to pilot payments, grand list stabilization payments, and there is currently a one-time appropriation for the Department of Taxes to provide grand list and appraisal assistance. This would have added that excess revenues above those amounts would be sent. Half of that would be sent to general state aid for town highways. And so this will strike that.
Later in the bill, we'll read about a way that we get more money to state aid for highways.
Thank you.
And then still leave the appropriations committee feeling like they can manage their situation.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the second instance of amendment strikes out all of section 19, which created a new chapter, the mileage-based user fee chapter, and inserts a new section 19, which splits chapter 43 into two subchapters and renames the chapter road usage charges. Since we have two types of charges here, as you'll see. The first is the mileage-based user fee in subchapter 1. The important changes in that are in the payment of the mileage-based user fee. There's one option for payment now, the annual payments at the end of your mileage reporting period. So at the end of each period, you're assessed a payment for the mileage-based user fee. That assessment is made within 14 days after the reporting period ends. They mail it to you. You have 45 days to elect either a lump sum or a monthly or quarterly payment. You also, as we'll see in a moment, instead of having 15 days to appeal that amount, you have 45 days to appeal that amount, but we'll get there. You're going to see a lot of these little highlights here. This was for the editors because I had to renumber everything. So we're going to skip past a lot of the renumbering. Here, where you see I've highlighted the number of miles traveled for a mileage reporting period, because we eliminated the pay-as-you-go option as a implement right away option. This was simplified, and so that's all this reflects here, is I've just condensed what used to be two subdivisions into one. Subsection C, again, similar changes here. So the mileage-based user fee rate is 0.014 cents per mile traveled. The reason we made that change is I realized that previously the original version of the bill had an annual inflator and had set out for fiscal year 2027. This just says the mileage-based user fee rate is this because it's ongoing. So that was more of a technical correction where you see that at that. In subsection D, we've added there are two new exemptions here. The first is for vehicles that are owned and operated by the state. The second is for vehicles that are used as short-term rentals, so rental cars. And we'll get to those with the second subchapter of road usage charges. Chris, did you raise that concern on the record? Do you want to do that?
I did not on the record.
Okay. So
Um,
that,
I'll
Yeah.
put it on the record. How's that?
I just didn't want to
Yeah, yeah.
say, as Chris mentioned earlier,
So the owned and operated by the state, I said that earlier, right? Like, we don't need to be moving money from one column to another. It seems just like a waste of people's time. The other one is, the short-term rentals, and I brought it up to the Agency of Transportation, right? It's that there's a lot of ways for them to completely avoid that fee, and so would rather, make sure that that's covered in another way. And, Patrick made a suggestion that Damien has put in further in language about ways we can cover that revenue for short-term rentals.
Yeah.
And it's short-term rental cars, just in case anyone's jumping into
Yeah.
another rental cars.
rental cars.
Rental cars, so if you charge them, yes. Like, yeah. We spent a lot of time with short-term rentals this year, yeah. So rental cars, a rental car company could register all their rental cars in another state and
Right.
never be subject to this quite easily, and we don't want to incentivize that.
Great. Okay. This is the change in the period to appeal your assessment. It's gone from 45 days or 15 days to 45 days after the assessment is mailed. And remember, mail includes email or digital notice too. So, but that gives more than a month. So even with US Postal Service delays, individuals should have plenty of time to respond.
Dan, just a stupid question. Yesterday we had a discussion about a day is a day.
Yes.
All be in multiples of 7.
A different attorney told us that all days should be in multiples of 7.
Yeah.
That's just for the judiciary.
Yeah. I
Never mind.
have never followed that rule, but
So good. Just pointing it out. Just was
Yeah.
fine.
yeah, I always do 15, 30, 45, 60 half months for me.
Perfect.
Gosh, this is like tracking your hours at a law firm here. What increment? I'm gonna bill. Sorry, I'm having flashbacks here. Okay. So in the interest payments earlier, as we were walking through it, we discussed that there wasn't a way for an individual to request a waiver. So an individual may request at any time that the commissioner waives some or all of the amount of the overdue fee or interest due or both pursuant to subsection A of this section. The commissioner may, upon receiving a request or on the commissioner's own motion. So this allows the commissioner to essentially say, I'm going to waive this interest because there was a mistake made here or something like that without an individual having to request the waiver. That just is giving the commissioner permission to correct internal errors by issuing a waiver. May waive some or all of the amount of the overdue fee and interest required if the commissioner, and there were questions about the excusable neglect. I took another look at waiver provisions and realized that in my sleepy state as I was drafting this, I overlooked the easiest one, which is good cause.
Oh,
So if good cause existed for the delay in payment, or if requiring payment would constitute an economic hardship. So in other words, if you have someone who has no money to pay the state anyway, or very little money, the commissioner can decide to waive the fees. So
or dog ate my homework.
yes, although maybe that is good cause. Yeah. Okay. All right. Not going to be drawn in here.
Don't.
In the appeals, actually in the section above the appeals section, these are the powers of the commissioner. So we talked this morning about how the committee requested that the power to enter into reciprocal agreements with other states should be struck until such time as there are other states nearby that are operating mileage-based user fees. And then the other powers were all related to hearing powers, and they're all already set out in 3 sections at the beginning of Title 23. So this just strikes all of those provisions that are either duplicated or would give reciprocal authority where there aren't surrounding states that have a mileage-based user fee at this time.
Sorry, Representative Messon?
Yeah, question, obvious question, I think. So why should we delete the language on reciprocal stuff? And I would anticipate that at some point there are gonna be some other states that are doing it.
Right, I thought the committee's request was that we take it out until such time as
Okay.
there are.
That's,
So, yeah,
that's fine.
that was my understanding, and if I got that wrong,
It seemed like remarkably intense and harsh language, given that there were no other states to reciprocate with yet. It just,
That's all cool. Thank you.
all right. In the next section, the committee had requested that there be an interim administrative appeal. I highlighted in the discussions this morning that it only existed for the assessments, not for any other decisions. So this provides that any person can file appeal of any final decision, order, or finding of the commissioner within not more than 45 days. And the commissioner shall establish procedures for filing and hearing those appeals pursuant to the existing law in Title 23. And then following that appeal, the individual can then appeal to the Superior Court under the rule for appeals from administrative decisions, which is in B. And then in subsection C, and I forgot to highlight that portion at the beginning here, which provides following a final decision on an appeal. And then in C, the appeals provided by this section and subsection 4303F, which is the appeal from assessments, shall be the exclusive remedies for any person for review of assessment decisions, orders, or findings. It just means that you can't, these are the appeals that we're giving you. These are your options. You can't pick something else that may fit and then file an appeal under that.
but you can still go to court.
You can still go to court. That's what B provides. You can go to court under Rule 74. So you have an appeal to court, an independent body. What you can't do is seek another avenue for appeal under a different statute or something like that that may be worded in such a way that you could argue that it applies. So that's what we're saying. So you're limited to the remedies that are on the paper here, but there is an administrative appeal followed by a court appeal for every decision or order under this chapter. So this is new language here related to those rental vehicles. So for any electric pleasure car subject to the use tax imposed pursuant to 32 VSA 8903D, and this is a special portion of the motor vehicle purchase and use tax, which applies a 9% tax on the rental charge for the rental of a motor vehicle in the state. There will be imposed on each transaction a road usage charge equal to 1% of that rental charge. So your total charge, instead of being 9%, will get to 10% now. So it's a 1% additional charge, which would be collected by the rental company and remitted to the commissioner and then deposited in the transportation fund. So this would be in lieu of a mileage-based user fee for rental vehicles. Instead, when they rent the vehicle in the state of Vermont, this is going to be in the taxes and fees assessed as part of that rental. And then we define rental charge to mean the same thing as in the purchase and use tax, just so that if anything changes, we stay consistent and rental companies don't need to figure out 2 different tax rates. The transition language here, because you've eliminated the pay in advance provision for newly registered vehicles, and the pay-as-you-go option. This has been simplified a bit. So it provides that if the initial mileage reporting period for a BEV begins before the BEV is required to renew its registration, there is a credit equal to the amount of the infrastructure fee paid. And then otherwise, your initial mileage reporting period is just whenever your first inspection begins whenever with your first inspection after January 1st. So it just gives a credit for folks who will start their mileage reporting period before they renew their registration.
And I was trying to address a concern that we talked to Patrick about to some degree, which is that folks paying in advance the first time and then paying afterwards all the other times seems like an incredibly confusing way to start a brand new payment regimen. And didn't want sort of to be having people pay twice. And so this seemed like a path forward.
So the next thing that in here, so the fourth instance of amendment would strike out the allocation of fiscal year 2027 mileage-based user fee revenues, because with no pay in advance option or pay as you go option, there will be no revenues between January and June of 2027 on the program, because your mileage, you won't have any reporting periods that end during that time period. And it replaces it with two new sections. The first section requires a report from the Secretary of Transportation on or before February 15th of next year regarding the potential for offering a pay-as-you-go option and including a plan for implementation of a pay-as-you-go program, as well as detailed information regarding anticipated staffing, administrative, and information technology needed to implement and operate the pay-as-you-go program, anticipated costs related to implementation and operation, and legislative language necessary to enable it. And then section 23.
Does everyone track why we would do that? Okay.
Section 23 is a transfer of funds. And I realized after, or right before we started talking, that I left out the fiscal year, so I need to add that in. But notwithstanding any provisions of 19 BSA section 11F to the contrary, section 11F governs the Transportation Infrastructure Bond Fund and restricts what it can be used for. The amount of $2.2 million is transferred from the Transportation Infrastructure Bond Fund to the Transportation Fund. And then of that amount, 1.7 million shall be allocated to general state aid for town highways. The amount allocated shall be appropriated for class 1, 2, and 3 town highways, and a portion distributed and used in the same manner as provided for under the current state aid program. But it shall not decrease the amount appropriated pursuant to that section under the standard formula for increasing that amount year over year, or be subject to the annual inflationary adjustment provided for. And the reason we're doing that is so that amount from the base year, when we put the inflator on it, each year it either goes up or stays the same depending on inflation. And it's a somewhat complicated inflator, but if there is an upward push, it'll move up, or if there is no upward push, it'll stay the same. And if you added this amount to that, it would suddenly bump it up to another tier, and you'd be inflating off the new number because it always looks at the previous year to inflate. So we just keep the two separate since this is a one-time transfer.
And this covers the revenue loss of not having sort of the two separate fee structures at the beginning, and covers and far exceeds the amount that was anticipated from that waterfall mechanism they built into the pilot.
Okay.
Yeah, Representative Hibble.
So what was the anticipated revenue coming in from pilot money?
The revenue coming in from the pilot money.
Trying to compare it to this new one-time 1.7.
Yeah, for fiscal, this is much more than what would have been available through the pilot fund. I'm gonna try to pull up a sheet real quick. And Damian, I don't know if you're still logged in, but, the chair would indulge me. If you could pull up House Transportation's, committee page on Tuesday and pull up Ted's spreadsheet. Could show the committee.
On my way.
Amy, did you finish walking through all the language?
I did.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect timing with your question, Representative Quigley. Thank you.
All right.
Or you segue.
So let me just scroll down here.
All right. So you see, go up just a little bit more so you can see the headers.
Yep, there we
So
go.
the third column that says FY 27 GovRec budget appropriations. The total of $15.8 million is the amount that is likely going to be appropriated out of the pilot fund in FY 27. The 12 point, so compare that against the next number down, the 16.2. That's the amount of revenue that we expect to come into the pilot fund post town meeting day, with the new towns being factored into the estimate. So the delta is between that $16,193,000 of revenue and the $15.8 million of expenses. So that's like in the neighborhood of about 400,000. The actual number will fluctuate a little bit because sometimes that 12.2 number ends up coming in less. But the amount that would have been available for town highway aid would have been half of that operating surplus. So if we just, for the sake of argument, compare the 16.2 against the 15.8 and say, $400,000, just for the sake of this discussion, that prior language would have made $200,000 available to town highway aid as opposed to 1.7 million.
Like a follow-up to, again, it looks like there may be cities and towns that are increasing their percentage to an additional 1%.
The ones that were approved at this past town meeting to go to an additional 1% are reflected in that estimate.
So the ones that are, would it come into this next year or would it be the following year?
We make estimates once towns have made decisions. So once there's an affirmative vote from a town, then we'll work with the tax department to come up with a forecast. But we do not,
Except for the situation like Stowe.
correct. That is an outlier. Yeah.
Okay, and then, thank you for that. Again, if you could tell me, or somebody can tell me that the Transportation Infrastructure Bond Fund, how much is in that and why can we use 1.7 million of it this year in one time?
I'll defer to my colleague.
Hey, Damian, do you want to have someone, or actually, this is fine. I don't need to.
I can leave this up and,
You're good.
okay.
Well said. Transportation infrastructure bond operating statement would probably be the most useful tool, but essentially last year there was $2.2 million at the bottom of the fund. It was carried forward into FY 27 and was not proposed to be spent in the government recommended budget and was just sitting there. So this proposal would transfer it into the transportation fund and then spend 1.7 town highway aid and leave 500,000 in the transportation fund to cover the potential revenue loss from the repeal of the EV infrastructure fee that will go into place in January 1, 27. There's the gap between start collecting the EMBA in 28 and the repeal of the EV infrastructure fee in 27. So there's a little bit of money sitting there to sort of make sure the T fund has enough money to get through 27.
So again, what you're telling me is that money can't be used unless we or the governor puts it in his budget. Right, that money that's in that fund, the Transportation Infrastructure Bond Fund, can't be used by the Transportation Department for.
But right now, it was not proposed to be appropriated to any projects or things at the agency as of the budget that was passed out of House Transportation.
The reason I'm asked, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna, to clarify, there is a lot of TIP money is appropriated all through the transportation budget, mostly for bridge projects. This amount represents an unallocated balance that was on the bottom line.
One could call it a couch cushion if one wanted to.
And sometimes these things materialize because there's a lot of price sensitivity involved in the TIP fund revenues, because the biggest source of that has to do with the assessment on gas. And when gas prices go up, more money goes into that fund. So there's a little bit of variability in that fund of revenues for New Future.
Again, I guess my big concern is this is only one-time money. And, you know, using it from the pilot fund is an ongoing amount of money. And again, I'm not real familiar with how that money in that special fund, infrastructure bond fund could be used, but I'm a little concerned about that.
I'm also really concerned about the ongoing money for this, like, and really want and think the pilot fund might be a really good place to pull it from. We don't have time to do all the modeling and the estimates to make that decision strategically, and the amount from this waterfall was not gonna, I'm worried the amount from the waterfall that they put into the bill is not enough to make enough of a difference. And so we'll feel like we solved the problem. The town still won't have enough money for their highway funds, and we'll stop talking about it. And by doing this one-time money, we get the town highways more money than they would have. And we can keep talking about it for the rest of the session. We're going to get another bill back from Senate Transportation that I think will also have all kinds of local option tax things in it. And we can keep like really live testimony going on it. Because I am also very concerned about that.
But again, what we could do is keep the pilot funds and still rob from this transportation.
We could, but I don't know if it's enough to really do it. And we haven't had the time to really dive into the pilot fund right now. Because Ted like just updated the estimates and I want us to have real time to take testimony on it, because I don't know about you, but I've heard everyone in this entire building have an idea about how to spend that money. The pilot money.
Pilot, definitely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I want to have time to have the league in to discuss it as well.
I just want to make sure everybody knows the pilot. Who
To what?
using pilot money for anything other than going back to the places where it was raised, so that these cities, I don't see money going to cities to pay for the homeless, to pay for emergency services for the homeless, to pay for all kinds of things that city are paying for. And they need their local options tax revenue.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, I
Part
mean,
of the testimony.
there's none of my towns that are able to take advantage of a 1%, you know, tax like that. So, you know, it would certainly, if you want to talk about a regional, you know, opportunity to help out some of the more rural towns, and, you know, this is a good way to do it.
This conversation is the exact reason I want us to have more than 30 minutes to figure this out. Because we are a microcosm of the entire building on this one.
And I absolutely need to have, I would like to have testimony in here about what it's costing for fire, rescue, police, and everything that's being spent on homelessness, right? That is a data point.
Thank you.
But it hasn't come to this committee and we need to see it.
I'm sure, I'm hoping just to get a very high level overview. Yes, on the transportation infrastructure bond on the TIB and how it works.
Do you like that from this team or that team?
This team would be,
I was gonna say,
3 minute would be
I
perfect.
think Chris will do a better job than I will.
Crystal Joint Fiscal, the TIP fund is a sort of separate fund in the realm of the transportation space that gets revenue from two sources. It gets a 3 cent per gallon assessment on diesel, which is like around $2 million a year. And it gets the proceeds of a 4% assessment on gas. And that is adjusted quarterly based on the average retail price, tax adjusted in the prior. So I don't have the revenue forecast right in front of me, but you know, I think it brings in somewhere between like 16 and 18-ish million, depending on where gas prices are. The fund was set up, Senator Weston set it up when he was the chair of House Transportation back in the day, as a way of issuing bonds to help transportation with a dedicated revenue stream to back up those bonds. 15 years ago, the state borrowed 3 different series of bonds, about $36 million, used those proceeds to bang out a lot of bridge and rail projects. Right around the Irene era, the Lake Champlain Bridge received the proceeds from it. We received some really flexible federal money during COVID that actually allowed us to pay off the rest of our debt. So we have no more outstanding TIB bonds, and the amount of money in that fund that isn't needed for debt service is used for projects on a pay-as-you-go basis. And there's a section of Title 19 that spells out all the rules that Damien is notwithstanding here. That basically says you use that money to do like structures, bridges, serious road work, things with a long useful life. So when you look at the white book of transportation projects, you'll see the TIB funds of where a lot of the bridge projects are. And there is this unallocated balance on the bottom line. And this has happened in the past where if the revenue forecast shows like one fund might be up and one might be down, sometimes there's an inter-fund transfer to balance each other out for the revenue forecast. That's similar to what's being contemplated.
That was a great overview. Thank you. Yeah, and it also says we have no debt. And if we ever
Right.
want in that fund, and if we wanted to really leverage that for some capital expenditures, we could.
We have limited capacity to do that, yeah, and you know, I think we maintained a coverage ratio in the past of like 3 to 1. So like you can't, you know, there's a real limit to how much of that money you want to spend on debt service.
Yeah.
But when we had bonds outstanding a few years ago, we're spending up $2.5 million a year on debt service. So yeah, now that that's gone, that bonding capacity, if it's needed, is there.
Okay.
Any other questions for Damien? Thank you, Damien. Any other questions for JFO?
That's great.
Any other questions for, yes, sorry, Jim.
Maybe not right now, but sometime soon. I was Rich Westman's vice chair when we set up the TIP bonds. And people want to know how we came about that. It was an interesting story, and it's worth, can't replicate the exact same circumstances now, but it's a good learn if people want to hear about it.
I would love that sometime. Thank you.
Okay, just tell me when.
Any questions for Matt Walker if he's willing to accept them? Doesn't have to be a little bill or.
I just appointed Michelle.
Okay, so yes.
For Matt.
Yeah.
So I understand that you guys were in a rush over there. And that what we got was not what you intended. Can you tell us anyhow the high points that were left out that maybe we ought to improve? Fiscal stuff.
You mean on the MBUF?
Matt, I'm Matt Walker, House Chair, Transportation. If there's the issue of what I felt rushed would be that we sent this out of committee a couple of days earlier than what was expected. We would have spent that time entirely in the mileage-based user fee arena. We don't spend a lot of time on tax language. We don't, it's also a brand new program. I think you heard this, not a lot of other states that have it. I would have liked to have gotten a lot further on the mileage-based user fee language. And I would generally say, without having much time to go over all of the changes, I think that the committee of tax and the Ledge Council that related to the language and needed to be adjusted, needs to be worked on. And very well, we're expecting our committee to come January when it's implemented, that we'll be back with updates and requests that have been needed in that area. So we would have liked to spend a couple more days on that. The issues around highway funding, that is something that is a big topic for the entire legislature. We've spent a lot of time, and people have come around to the idea that we have a T-fund problem that has systemic long-term funding. But what I don't think I did a good enough job of, and it's really starting to, and I appreciate the chair's comments, fixing the T-funding, it helps with the state project, but it does nothing to the town highways, structures, and culvert and their programs, and that they face that same issue with incredibly rising costs and inflation eating away with it. And nothing in the T-bills and nothing in transportation automatically increases anything for our town highway and road crews. And that is why our committee put in 2 different places an effort to really highlight the issue that somebody's got to be looking out for somewhere to try to find help for the towns. And I appreciate very much the chair's comments related to that. That dialogue has to go forward. Fixing the T-fund is critically important. There's a piece in the big bill about addressing some of that systemic change. There was a significant change last year with the JTOC transfer, for those of you that remember. But that's still not all the way fixed, but I'm also trying to make sure, and I think the chair here recognizes, that still doesn't help any of our towns and municipalities or cities. The town highway aid, the reason we push on that one is because it's the least restrictive and it's the most divided up formula by how many miles you have of each class of road. So that's why we highlight that one as trying to, whatever help it is at whatever level, even if it is small, we're trying to highlight, the entire committee was 11-0 on trying to highlight this issue. And I'm glad to get the chance to speak to it. So the language is what we really didn't get to, but our insistence on trying to drive a conversation around town highways is a huge goal for our committee.
Thank you, Matt.
I just want to appreciate what Representative Walker said and underscore that. So, both North and South Main Street in Berry City are state highways. And we are now looking for the second time in 3 to 4 years of just using municipal money to pave those places, because we just can't wait because of the structural issues in the T fund. So this is impacting rural communities, urban communities in our state, and it's an extremely real problem that we need to address. And also just namely, not to revisit the pilot fund conversation that we've more or less moved on from. But there's, we used other pilot money earlier this year in a way that I didn't love either. So, I really, really hope that we're going to have that conversation sooner rather than later.
And if folks want to email me who you would like to invite for witnesses to have a deep pilot conversation, accepting suggestions. Anything else on this? But yes.
Question
Yep.
for Matt.
Yeah, go for it.
I hope I answered that one.
Very well, thank you, Matt. And so what is your opinion, if you don't mind sharing it, about what we just heard? My way of operating is I hate being rushed. I can't think if we're rushed. And here's an example. So can you give me your opinion of what you just heard from Damien, in whom we have a lot of trust, but I want to hear from you too.
It's a little bit different than the usual. I appreciate that. I support what our committee's work is, and I very much want to highlight that conversation. And I think that the pilot fund is discussed all the way through the building, and it was our effort to be part of that conversation. I appreciate that we're in that part of that conversation. Because there's additional money for towns, which is one of our highest priority, I would imagine that our committee would support the direction of the amendment with a pretty significant look to the commitment to the future conversation. And I hope that even though we're only a wall apart, I think a lot of times you guys are on a lot different topics and a lot more to go on. But this one is obviously our number one priority, and perhaps we could, occasionally put a window or a wall and a hole in the wall. We could talk a little bit more about our transportation struggles. I think given the limitations of where we're at and what I think that we would, especially you would want to, it's a major priority for the committee to have more money for town highways and to have people understand that. And I think we would, because the amount of money is more, that we would go in that direction. And because now everybody's aware that pilot money is being used for other things than towns, I would love the opportunity to say that 100 times on the floor so that everybody understands the next level of the conversation. There's more money here for towns than there was in the bill we, as I said, over, but I don't want to give up on the issue much forward. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
We were able to put the escalator in last year, and it will compound yearly, and that was about 1.4 million more through the various programs for the towns last year. This is 1.7. I guess I will try to convince the committee that's a small step in the right direction compared to more. And if I have 11 more people that are aware of the issues facing T funds and town highways, I will think that we make progress. And hopefully be able to make more the next time. My limited time in the building tells me incremental progress, the only way that we really move forward.
That seemed that way. Thank you, Matt. Thanks.
Madam Chair,
Representative Canfield.
I move that the committee finds draft 1.1 of the committee amendment to H 944 friendly.
Thank you. Representative Canfield moves that we find our amendment to H 944 favorable. Representative Holcomb seconds. Damien, it's 1.2 because you have to do a thing, right?
Yeah, it's that clarification.
Yeah,
Oh, 1.2.
thank you.
I'll send that to Sarsha.
Representative Holcomb, second. Any discussion?
We'll probably be voting no, but just to keep this conversation alive and make sure that, that at least one no vote indicates that pretty concerning, especially for my small communities.
Remember, your town's getting more money, but will you send me suggestions for testimony for when we do the pilot? Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no further discussion, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
I'll vote yes as Representative Burkhardt, Representative Higley,
No,
Representative Holcomb,
Yes.
Representative Kimball,
Yep.
Representative Maslin. Representative Odie. Representative Page is absent. Representative Wazazak.
Yes.
Representative Canfield.
Yes.
And Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
We have voted the amendment favorable 9-1-1.
oh,
It's not good.
It's the second time we've done that today. Some things that don't.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we find 944 as amended favorable.
Thank you. Representative Canfield moves to find H 944 favorable. Representative Holcomb seconds. Any discussion of the bill as amended? Seeing none, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
I'll vote yes as Representative Burkhardt, Representative Higley, Representative Holcomb. Representative Holcomb? Yes. Representative Kimball?
Yes.
Representative Maslin?
Yep.
Representative Odie? Yes. Representative Page is absent. Representative Wazazak?
Yes.
Representative Canfield?
Yes.
And Representative Kornheiser?
Yes.
And we have voted the bill favorable as amended, also 9-1.
Thank you, everyone. If we could all just hang out for a few minutes while Julia and John come. We'll go off live or mute or something like that, and then look at yield bill language before tomorrow.
I can't do